It's been a long time since I've written anything here, but that's mostly because there hasn't been anything to write about these last 5 months. Unless you hold the archival value of a detailed chronicle of Ivar kicking my ass every single day in any particular regard, but things have been shaking up around here over the last week. So I may as well get it all down now that I have a minute to catch up. All of this started during an evening devoid of seasonal trappings of any sort, given that I've been unable to leave this underground bunker. Vivian was tending to my injuries in the wake of one of Ivar and I's daily sparring matches. I had gone 5 rounds with the man, which is a far cry from nearly being killed within the first few seconds on a number of occasions at first. I'd grasped the fundamentals of blocking certain attacks and generally making the beating overall less painful, but that's about it. By then I'd gotten used to it as a routine part of my day, and the medicine these guys keep in stock is highly effective at correcting long-term damage. At least that's what they tell me. To be fair, I do always feel fully recovered whenever I wake up the next day after treatment, so I'm inclined to believe them. Plus, Vivian has proven herself to be good company over the last few months. Apparently, her primary responsibility on this team is research, analysis, and basically anything involving computers, since she's the only member under 40 prior to my arrival. When I came along, she was reassigned to the duty of tending to me after training, monitoring my health and generally taking care of me, while I'm still a prospect for this organization. However, she doesn't seem to be bitter about the reassignment in any way, which is honestly wicked cool of her. We get along very well, as a matter of fact. At first, we talked mostly about our shared interests, which made for interesting conversation due to clashing tastes. You know, that sort of thing. Of course, with time, our conversation began to skew more personal. I told her what my deal was, where I came from, and what my family was like, and so on. In the course of getting to know her, I learned that she was a descendant of Mayflower Brahmin royalty, who fell very deep into the occult during a stint at an elite all-girls boarding school for at-risk ruined debutantes her parents had condemned her to. While delving into all of that, she also stumbled upon a fixation for something called creepypasta. For the handful of people who might have somehow discovered this written account by accident, creepypasta is just this urban legend-style offshoot of short horror fiction published on the internet. Anyway, I said fixation earlier when I should have led with obsession. Vivian believed, despite all evidence to the contrary, that some creepypastas must have been based on true stories. Her erstwhile discovery that, as a matter of fact, many of them were, came at the cost of getting caught by the feds for stealing government secrets. In lieu of throwing her into a black site that would make the rape child of Guantanamo Bay and Alcatraz blush, some asshole named Lance Dillinger decided to give her a job as part of the X-Team, and the rest is history. Holy shit, she said quietly to herself after reading some sort of document that had just been printed out nearby. What's wrong? I asked. It's the results from your latest physical, she said as she turned her gaze to me. What about it? I asked, steadily growing more irritated at her refusal to address the worrisome knot growing in my stomach. You've just became eligible for the Cronenberg serum. The pin-drop silence fell upon the room at the mention of it. The fucking Cronenberg serum. For something that's basically all I'd been hearing about ever since I got here, I knew very little about it. Based on the name, I had deduced that it was some kind of chemical compound they inject you with when you become a full-fledged member of the X-Team. All Duncan would tell me at first is that the serum makes it a lot easier to kill shit, and that eligibility for it is determined by meeting their standard of physical fitness and mental fortitude. I was never told what the actual standard was, most likely for fear that my knowledge of it would muddy the results, especially the mental one, as you might imagine. In my experience to that point, The mental tests mostly involved desensitizing me to violence and stress, followed by a psychological evaluation performed by Vivian. I'm still not sure what the exact fitness requirement is, but I've easily gained at least 15 pounds of muscle since my arrival, which came with the rapid evaporation of what little body fat I had. "Aren't you ecstatic?" Vivian asked, dispersing the tension from the room. "And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how I feel," I replied. "Come on, Cullen, this is big news. You'll finally be one of us, God. If I were you, I'd be bouncing off the fucking walls right now." Of course, I understood her incredulity at my hesitation. She had trained for years to be eligible herself, but despite apparently having a better mental score than anyone else, at least according to Lance, meeting the physical requirement had proven to be impossible for her. Even in her peak physical shape, she apparently just lacks the sheer body mass to be able to take the serum without dying. Nonetheless, the team took her on as a full-fledged member. Ivar and Duncan apparently even worked together to create a fucking mech suit for her to compensate. Though Vivian was grateful that they still accepted her into the fold, it was clear that she was still a bit bitter about the whole affair. There would always be a fundamental rift between her and the rest of the team, and this new revelation put me firmly on the other side of it, along with them. Look, I know I've already been here for a few months now, but I'm still just barely getting adjusted to all of this, alright? Anytime I think I've gained some sense of familiarity, Ivar literally beats it out of me, I began. I hope you know this won't change anything. You patching me up after training will always be the best part of my day. Vivian chuckled a bit at that. Wait, you're telling me you're always going to be this sappy and sentimental? While trying to think up a quick retort after rolling my eyes, we were interrupted by the PA system.
Vivian and Cullen, report to the main hall.
The robotic voice squawked at us. Duncan, Ivar, and Lance were already standing in the center of the main hall, donned in black robes. "Looks like I'm not the only one who got the news," Vivian said as we walked up to greet them. "I guess at this point I shouldn't be surprised that you guys would go all out like this, right?" I asked in an attempt to dispel the quiet. "Present your arm," Duncan said coldly. "Ta-da," I said while waving my hand in front of them. Before I could process what was happening, Duncan gripped my hand and slashed my wrist with a small sapphire-studded dirk, which I only just then learned he had been holding in his other hand under his robe. I cried out in shock as blood began to pour from the wound. While I attempted to get my bearings, Duncan and the others slashed the palms of their hands. By this point, Vivian had returned, likewise now sporting a black robe and a nasty gash in the palm of her hand. "Nietzsche once said that he who fights monsters should see to it that in the process, he does not become a monster," Duncan began as he walked up closer to face me. "We in the X-Team have a saying of our own," he continued, as the others formed a small circle behind him. "Nietzsche was a fucking pussy." At that, Duncan gripped the wound on my wrist with the one on his hand. After releasing it, the others did the same. Vivian then stepped out of the room, leaving me with the others, face to face with Duncan again. "The blood of monsters courses through you. The glory of our hunt, as well as its trespasses, are now yours." Vivian stepped to my side again, this time holding a large syringe. "From this moment forward, your humanity is forsaken. Your life as an abomination among abominations begins now." Vivian put the syringe against the side of my neck. "Well, at least this won't hurt as much as the cut on the wrist," I said, immediately eating my words upon hearing the uproarious laughter of the other men as the needle made its way into my neck. The fluid felt ice cold going in, very quickly getting extremely hot and fiery. A bit like whiskey going down, only a lot more painful and covering every conceivable part of my body, inside and out. I have no memory of the following 12 hours outside of that excruciating pain. It was as if I were being constantly ripped apart and put back together again at a molecular level. However, something worth mentioning is that throughout the duration of all of this, my brain and eyes were inundated with overall positive sensations, physical and otherwise, that I lack the words to describe. At the combination gymnasium armory the next morning, I was greeted with a shocking sight. Duncan and Ivar were seated at one of the tables eating donuts, and beckoned me over. "I thought you said the next time you saw me eat bread or sugar you'd kill me, Ivar," I said as I walked up to greet the men. "That was before you became my equal, brother," Ivar said as he leapt from his seat and braced me with a hug. This time, miraculously, he didn't manage to break any of my ribs. "Well, alright then," I said. "Got any Boston cream left?" At that, Ivar laughed heartily. "I fucking told you, man, didn't I?" Duncan said from his seat. "Told him what?" I asked. "Earlier, Duncan said to me, 'Leave one of the Boston creams. That little New England patty cracker earned it.'" We all shared a laugh at that as I sat down with them. To say that the donut was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted would be an understatement. How much of that had to do with the serum, or the fact that it was the first meal I'd had in months that wasn't one of Ivar's foul protein blocks, is anyone's guess. "I meant it, by the way," Duncan said. "I'm proud of you, old son." Admittedly, hearing that from him was edifying. Until then, I'd always seen these guys as towering, imposing figures that I could never hold a pissing candle to. The great irony is that it was only after they turned me into a monster that I began to see their humanity. "Well, I should probably head back to the lab," I said, standing from my place. "Vivian said that she needs to run a few tests on me now that I've taken the serum." "We probably shouldn't tell Lance about how close those two kids have gotten, right?" Ivar asked Duncan as I began to walk away. "Frankly, I'm more worried about what she'll wind up doing to him if he starts fucking things up somehow," Duncan replied. "I can still hear you guys," I said without turning back. "Good," Duncan shouted back. "That way you'll have a better idea of what you're getting into." "I'm not getting into anything," I said. "Not with that attitude, you're not," Ivar replied, sharing a hearty belly laugh with Duncan as I exited the room. I had been stopped from behind in the main hall by a hand on my shoulder, one whose cold grip by now became startlingly familiar. "Top of the morning, Lance." "The fact that your affected Bill Burr Dropkick Murphy's bullshit endures in charming the others continues to astound," he said. "So you're gonna keep playing hard-ass even though we're equals now." "Good to know," I said, before turning to walk away. "Equals?" He scoffed. "Mr. MacNamara, the men of this organization have been drenched in the blood of horrors beyond your imagining since you were in short pants. I had mastered the art of severing the limbs of gods by the time you managed not to soil them. A lesson you appear to have forgotten last night." "Wait, seriously?" I asked. "Yeah, not even 15 minutes after the injection. It was like a projectile geyser of diarrhea. I had never seen anything like it." "And here I thought you were a man of experience," I interjected. "That's cute," he quipped. "But you're not the cock of the walk just because you got lucky with clockwork." That time, I resisted the urge, I promise. "However, you did take to the Cronenberg serum and live. In this respect, you have exceeded my expectations." "Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence," I said sarcastically. "It's primarily a vote of astonishment, as indicated before, but sure." "What do you want, anyway?" I asked. Lance didn't respond right away. Instead, he just started sizing me up, concluding his odd inspection with sustained inquisitive eye contact. "Just wanted to see how well you took to it, is all. Again, I was dubious of your survival. Even though I passed the tests," I asked. For a moment, Lance looked down and murmured to himself. Then, after checking his phone in the wake of a notification, he looked back up at me. "You appear to be in a morbid sort of luck, Mr. MacNamara, as I've just received word that a new mission is underway," he said matter-of-factly. "Holy shit, what's going on?" I asked. "Rest assured. You'll be briefed in the main hall along with the rest of the team." "Can't you at least tell me what kind of creature it is?" I asked excitedly, admittedly very eager to get out of this fucking underground prison cell. Lance sighed and gripped the bridge of his nose before looking back up at me. "The target is a prolific terrorist, who also happens to get off on torturing children to death. Since he appears to have been able to elude the proper authorities thus far, we've been called to look into the matter. He goes by the alias Forensic."